Sure.
Yeah.
You're listening to Muslimish Freethinkers, a podcast dedicated to fostering conversations on matters of faith and disbelief.
Good afternoon, dear everyone watching us, uh, or good evening and good morning, wherever you are in the world, and whenever you watch this later on as a recording. I'm so excited to introduce this episode. It has been a while for Muslimish to present a podcast, and here comes the time. So, first, I would like to welcome you to Muslimish. Muslimish is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to create a safe, supportive, and open minded environment for the exchange of thoughts and ideas to foster a realistic society that respects the rights of all individuals to live according to their conscience and to abolish blasphemy and apostasy laws across the globe. Muslimish was established in 2013 in New York City and now functions in 12 chapters in North America. If you value our mission statement, we encourage you to become a Muslimish member as we rely on the generous support and volunteerism of our members and donors to sustain our programs. My name is Wissam Charafeddine, and I joined Muslimish in 2012 and helped found it as an organization in 2013. I'm currently on Muslimish Board of Directors, and I'm a member of Muslimish Detroit. I will be your host today. And I have the pleasure of introducing the panelists with us today. We have Miss Nadia Akanan, who's a certified holistic health coach renowned for her incredible work and weight loss and health management. Her passion for helping people stems from her own struggle with obesity and health issues during her childhood and teenage years, which she overcame through sheer determination and self discovery. Nadia hit rock bottom at the age of 20 when weighed over 200 pounds, but with her own finding and research, she managed to lose over 70 pounds and embark on a mission to help others reach optimum health. She opened her own weight loss center where she has successfully helped thousands of clients achieve their weight loss goals for over 13 years. That's unique approach focuses on a three-step process formula that have proven to be highly effective. That holistic nutritionist approach we will hear from today on the subject of halal meat. And we also have the pleasure of having Ali Rizvi with us. He's a Pakistani born Canadian physician and atheist ex Muslim and secular humanist, writer, and podcaster who explores the challenges of Muslims who leave their faith. He is the author of The Atheist Muslim and works in scientific communications. Ali Rizvi was born in Lahore, grew up in Libya and Saudi Arabia, and finished medical school in Karachi. At McMaster University, he received the Master of Science in Biochemistry, and later spent 5 years specializing in pathology at State University of New York at Buffalo. We also have with us Issam Ozeir, who is a data scientist who calls himself a data storyteller. Every data set has a story to tell. He excels in discovering patterns or trends in data and holds two master's degree, an MBA, and a Master of Science in Business Analytics. In addition to that, Issam is a real estate agent, entrepreneur, and a meat specialist. He belongs to a family heritage of meat specialists and butchers. He owned and operated meat houses in Lebanon and in Michigan, USA. He has a first-hand experience in the meat handling industry. Welcome everyone to Muslimish podcast.
Thank you.
Humans have hunted, farmed, and scavenged animals for meat since prehistoric times. The establishment of settlements in the Neolithic Revolution 12,000 years ago allowed the domestication of animals such as chickens, sheep, rabbits, pigs, and cattle. This eventually led to their use in meat production on an industrial scale in slaughterhouses. Animal slaughter is usually referring to killing domestic livestock. It's estimated that each year, 10 times the population of all humans today, that is 80 billion land animals, are slaughtered for food. That is 220 million every day, or 9.3 million every hour, or 155,000 every minute. Most animals are slaughtered for food. Slaughter typically involves some initial cutting, opening the major body cavities to remove the entrails and offal, but usually leaving the carcass in one piece. Such dressing can be done by hunters in the field or in the slaughterhouses. Later, the carcass is usually butchered into smaller cuts. Meat is mainly composed of water, protein, and fat. It's edible raw, but is normally eaten after it has been cooked, seasoned, or processed in a variety of ways. Unprocessed meat will spoil or rot within hours or days as a result of infection with and decomposition by bacteria and fungi. Meat is important to the food industry, economies, and cultures around the world. There are nonetheless people who choose to not eat meat, vegetarians, or any animal products, vegans, for reasons such as taste, preference, ethics, environmental concerns, health concerns, or religious dietary rules. Today, we tackle the subject of halal meat. Before that, let's remove the two main myths before we dwell into the subject of halal meat. Myth number one: halal meat is healthier since they drain all the blood out before completely killing the animal. First, all meat you buy from the supermarket has been drained of blood to prevent spoilage. I'm gonna mute you, Hassan. You can unmute yourself when it comes to talk. Um, so the first myth is that halal meat is healthier since all the blood is drained. Actually, today all blood is drained from the meat because it prevents spoilage. Think about how long the meat is sitting there and how long it will be sitting in your fridge before you cook it up. In that time, the blood will most definitely congeal and rot and spoil the meat soon after it hits the market shelves. Second, according to Professor Carol O'Neill, who teaches nutrition at Louisiana State University Agricultural, says that there isn't enough studies to confirm the claim of halal and kosher meat being healthy than conventional meat. Basically, there are no studies to prove that to be true. There are claims that when animals are given shock treatment in conventional slaughterings, their bodies are flooded with epinephrine, adrenaline, and that has an effect on humans who consume said meat. But this has no scientific backing. Also, there is a claim that halal and kosher being healthier because there are bacterium and toxins in blood that are potentially harmful. Now, sure, removing the blood can reduce the dosage of harmful pathogens that you are consuming, but if you cook it all thoroughly, it doesn't matter. Not to mention that there are many cultures out there that eat actually blood, and they largely seem fine. Also, given the mass consumption of non halal meat, you would say by now we would notice the health effects, but there are none that warrants observation. The meat we purchase from the market has been drained anyway to prevent spoilage and keep the meat fresher for longer. It's more economical that way. The red stuff we see oozing out of our slab of steak is just myoglobin. It gives blood the red color. Actually, drained blood has other commercial uses in insulin production and for diabetics and pet food production, for example. So it's actually reused from the slaughterhouses. Now, there are factors which can make halal and kosher meat better than the average conventional meat, but it boils down to the strict quality control and regulation rather than the act of blood draining. The second myth, halal slaughter is more humane. That might have been true in the past, and with strict adherence to the laws of Sharia slaughter. The knife has to be sharp, the animal needs to be quenched out of thirst and away from the sight of other animals. The slit needs to be in one action that gets both arteries. That is more humane way to slaughter 1500 years ago. Today, neither humans can sustain these rules. These rules are rarely followed, nor they are the most humane way. More humane ways have been developed to reduce the unnecessary suffering of the animal. We are going to start our conversation with Ali Rizvi under the question, should ritualistic slaughter have a place in our modern society today?
Well, I think I don't think it necessarily should. I mean, I think that what you laid out was is pretty clear. I think you made a very good argument. There is no evidence right now that ritualistic slaughter or the meat that we get from ritualistic slaughter is in any way healthier or has confers any advantages over the other kind of meat. And I think that I'm pretty sure Issam's going to later talk about like the aspects of what the animal goes through. But I think another question here that I want to talk about to start right at the get-go is this concept of halal meat. Is it supported by the Quran, the way that we think of it, that, you know, the animal has to be slaughtered, the name of Allah has to be said over it? And the answer is no. Actually, all of the meat that you eat here, all of the, I mean, aside from pork and the obviously the banned meats, I mean, in Islam, all the meat that you get, all the chicken, all the beef, everything, the vast majority of it is already halal in Western countries. And this is supported by the Quran. So, Wissam, with your permission, can I just go ahead and explain this a little bit further?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Right. So there are several verses in the Quran that actually deal with this. There are four main ones. The first one is Surah 2, 173, Surah 5, verse 3, Surah 6, 145, and Surah 16, 115. I won't go through all of them because they all essentially say the same thing. There's repetition, but I will go with the main one that's famous for this, which is Surah 5, verse 3. All right. And this says, and this is from Surah Al-Ma'idah. So this says, quote, this is a Sahih International Translation. It says, prohibited to you are dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah, and those animals killed by strangling or a violent blow, or by a headlong fall, or by the goring of horns, and those from which a wild animal has eaten, except that you are able to slaughter before its death, and those which are sacrificed on stone altars. Okay, so if we go through this bit by bit, we see some patterns, right? First of all, supposing you're getting like chicken McNuggets from McDonald's, okay? Is that a dead animal? Like, well, I mean, was it dead before it was killed? No, it wasn't, right? Is there blood? Are you drinking blood? No. Is it swine? It's not. Has it been dedicated to anybody other than Allah? That's the question. So the Quran nowhere says that this meat has to be dedicated to Allah, or that Bismillah or Allahu Akbar has to be said before you slaughter it. It doesn't even say that the meat needs to be slaughtered. All it says is the meat cannot be dedicated to anybody other than Allah. And the reason it says that, in the context of it, is that there were those idol, the idol gods that the Quraysh worshipped. They used to sacrifice meat at their altars, which is what it says here later. That was a context. They shouldn't be dedicated to any other god. But none of the meat that you get here is dedicated to anybody. It's definitely not dedicated to anybody other than Allah. So this is repeated in the other verses. In all of the translations that you look at, you know, in Pickthall, Yusuf Ali, and Shakir, and any of these translations that you look at, it's all the same. You're just not allowed to eat meat that has been dedicated to anybody other than Allah. So that also goes for all of the other verses. They speak about it the same way. Two verses after this, in Surah 5, verse 5, right? It also says that this day all good foods have been made lawful, and the food of those who were given the scripture is lawful for you, and your food is lawful for them. So this is for Christians and Jews. This is why a lot of Muslims, before halal meat became, very common in the West, a lot of the Muslims here used to eat kosher food, Jewish food, because it's slaughtered in a similar way. But again, the whole idea of zabiha, or slaughter, is actually not mentioned in the Quran either, right? In this context, at least. Now, there is a verse that people talk about, which is in Surah Al-An'am, which is Surah 6, verse 118. That says, "So eat of that meat upon which the name of Allah has been mentioned, if you are believers in His verses." And this does not say eat the meat upon which the name of Allah has been mentioned while it was slaughtered. It just says eat the meat upon which the name of Allah has been mentioned. So you can actually say it when you eat it. You don't have to say it when you slaughter it. And there are many. I mean, this is a very, very broad verse that doesn't really mean anything when it comes to slaughtering, right? The only place where the Quran mentions slaughtering when it comes to meat, all right, is in Surah 22, right? This is Surah Al-Hajj, and this is about Hajj specifically, and about the end of the pilgrimage, as we know in Eid al-Adha, is where it says in verse 36, it talks about lining up the animals for slaughter. Right, once you line them up, they fall to their side. Then you eat from them and you give it to the needy. And this is specifically in the context of Hajj. And if you start from earlier verses from the same surah from verse 27, and then you go on to verse 36 and you read the whole thing, that becomes pretty clear. So this whole idea of even saying the name of God over meat, it doesn't just apply to meat; it applies to pretty much everything, all kinds of food. Right, that's one thing, and the other thing is that it just doesn't say anywhere that the meat has to be slaughtered in any way, or that you have to say the name of God while you are slaughtering it. And the final thing I'll say about this here is that if you look at the kinds of meat that are forbidden, going back to Surah 5, related to Surah Ma'idah, verse 3, sorry, it says the animals that are killed by strangling, by being hit, a violent blow, a headlong fall, they're dropped from a height, or by the goring of horns. All of these ways of killing have one thing in common, and that's the extravasation of blood. That means the blood comes out of the vessels and it goes into the tissues surrounding it. Right, so that's what happens in a bruise. If you get hit, you have a bruise, the blood has come out of the vessels and it's gone into the tissues surrounding it. That's what happens when you're dropped from a height, if you've been hit in the head, if there's goring of horns and so on. So that is really the common denominator here. But according to the Quran, going only by the Quran, right, none of the meat that you get in the West, unless it has been dedicated to some specific god, if it hasn't been dedicated to any god, it is halal for you. Say the name of Allah before you eat it, and it's all yours. The halal industry, otherwise the zabiha industry, all of this is basically like like Islamic banking, where they call interest. They still have interest, just call it profit, or it's essentially it's a huge commercial enterprise. It makes a lot of money for people, and people just believe it. And it's all pretty much. I mean, if I had to be less euphemistic, it's a scam. So I'm done now.
Thank you, Ali. So this seems more of a argument within the Islamic context.
Correct.
And that's that's a discussion also by itself. That most Muslims actually, because the madhab al-Hanafi, which is about 80% of the Sunni madhab, and the Sunni is about 90% of Muslims in total, they do allow the biha of Ahl al-Kitab, the slaughter of the Christians and Jews. So the trend of focusing on zabiha has become more of a trend rather than a scholastic issue. But it needs to be discussed internally within Muslims. We are also here. This is a great, you shed light on that, perspective, and we're also here going to shed also more light from a scientific perspective and other perspectives. We'll go now to Issam. Issam, you have direct experience with slaughterhouses, and you've had that direct experience both in the Middle East and in the West. Talk to us a little bit about the what no, that's good. Okay. Which one is the right one? Let me see. All right, sorry about that. Just some internet issues. So, Issam, talk to us a little bit about the process of slaughter as you have experienced it firsthand. Is really halal slaughter? Is it really halal slaughter? Is there a capability of keeping up with these rules given the amount of meat that has to be slaughtered on a daily basis? And talk to us then about the quality of meat. How much does halal or non-halal contribute to the topic of quality of meat?
So yeah, so when it comes to halal meat not only the way you slaughter the animal itself, so it's the way you prepare and consume according to Sharia law. When it comes to slaughtering an animal, by experience, also by practice, that's what we did in the Middle East and partially here in Michigan. So the animal should be alive, healthy, and kicking before you slaughter it. It shouldn't be sick or diseased. The person performing the slaughter should be a Muslim, and he should say the word Allahu Akbar when he slaughters, Bismillah, when he slaughters the animal. The slaughter should be done with a very sharp knife from one vein to another vein with one hit, and the spinal cord should remain intact. You should not reach or touch the spinal cord. This is very, very crucial. The animal should be allowed to bleed out for 10 to 15 minutes whenever it bleeds out and drains out of the blood. And then after that, you should just wash where you slaughtered the animal. It should be washed, and the knife that you used to slaughter the animal should be washed too. And the meat then should be cut and packaged in a halal way. So the knife should always stay clean, tahira, and any piece of metal that you use when you prepare the meat should be tahira or clean. So, for example, you cannot use a knife that you used on non-halal meat on halal meat, then this meat will become non-halal meat, for example. And that's what we do in the Middle East. Here in Michigan, what I experienced is something different. So they stun the animal before they kill it or they slaughter it, either by a gun or by electrical stunning. And this is when it comes to what we used to practice in the Middle East, this is not considered halal 100%. So here, some sheikhs in Michigan, they have no problem with that due to the fact that that's where they live right now. So they have no word. If they had a word in that, they would say no. But since they have no word, so they are just keeping their eyes closed and they are okay with that.
Just a question, Issam. So the animal, when stunned, it becomes unconscious.
Yes.
Is it a condition to be conscious during the slaughter?
Yeah, so stunning may affect the blood flow in the animal's body. So as the heart continues to beat after stunning, this can cause the blood to pool in certain areas or certain tissues, just like Dr. Ali said just a minute ago. This can lead to some changes in the blood quality or might affect the pH level in the blood itself. That's
Right.
why.
Is it part of the Sharia that the animal cannot be unconscious when it's slaughtered?
Yes, it should be awake and should be very healthy. So it should be awake. It should be stunned or out of, it's not awake. It should be awake when you kill the animal.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the slaughtering side. That's on the. But if you're gonna ask questions about what's the quality of the meat served, so halal has nothing to do with the quality of the meat. So you can still have Angus, or you as the choice beef slaughtered in non-halal way. It's gonna taste delicious versus a bull that's slaughtered in a halal way. It's gonna taste crappy. So the taste has nothing to do. It's the meat quality itself. But handling the way you handle the meat definitely affects the way the meat tastes.
Okay, you had first-hand experience in slaughtering animals in Michigan, correct?
Yeah.
Does USDA, does it supervise the process, or FDA?
Yes, definitely. They have inspectors in the slaughterhouse. Every certified slaughterhouse in the United States has on site an inspector, health inspector. This animal should be certified to be eaten, should be healthy.
So, one of the conditions in Sharia slaughter is that the animal should not be slaughtered in front of other animals.
Yes.
Is that usually typically followed?
No, not here.
It has to be a special farm or something,
So
right?
yeah, if you kill your own animal in a farm, it's just the only animal that you kill. But if you go for if you cannot scale or mass production and do one animal at a time. It's not scalable process.
I heard about custom slaughter where it is outside the USDA regulations.
You can go to the any farm and slaughter yourself, but you cannot sell that animal. It should be certified
That's just for personal
for your
use.
personal use. You can just kill it and bring it home, and no one will just ask about it. But you cannot sell it. When you sell it, you have to have a certified inspector that certifies the meat.
When they certify the meat, what do they look for?
They look for bacteria level of bacteria in the meat itself. But before that, even so, the animal itself, it should be healthy before you kill it. So
Okay.
the inspector has to see the animal before you kill it.
So, according to the USDA, the animal that's being slaughtered, whether it's halal or non halal, they are certifying it to be healthy to be consumed.
Definitely, yes.
So
It's
that they
just the
don't see a
process itself.
difference between the
Yeah, that's just the process itself. The process of so there's 6 to 8 steps. You have to follow these steps mutually at the same time. You cannot say I followed 4 steps out of the six, then this is halal due to the Sharia law. You have to follow the 6 to 8 steps. But this doesn't mean that if you do not kill by halal or slaughter by halal, it means that the beef or the animal it's not healthy. It's the same animal, the same farm, the same inspector inspecting the same animal. So it's up to you to how to kill the animal.
Okay, this brings us to the subject of nutrition. Thank you, Issam. Miss Nadia, the nutritional facts about consuming meat. If you have any idea whether halal or non halal has any effect on the nutrition. And when we talk about nutrition, what do you want us to watch for when we're talking about consuming meat?
Absolutely. I actually want to start my this topic with Surah من Quran, since we're in the Muslimish community here. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم ولا تطغوا فيه فيحل عليكم غضبي ومن يحلل عليه غضبي فقد هوى. So, صدق الله العلي العظيم. That means I'm gonna talk here about what God created for us on earth to have and enjoy as food, with one condition: not to change the quality of it. And that's how I explain this verse of the Quran from Surah Taha, and that's verse 80. But I'm going to go back to your question, and we'll come back to this one maybe in a later topic about the nutritional facts, and whether what we need to focus on, and what are the things that we need to be aware. From a nutritional standpoint, there's no evidence showing that there's any difference in the nutrition facts of the quality of the meat, whether it's halal or non-halal. You are still getting the same nutrition facts regardless. Depend, of course, on what part of the meat you're getting, if it has more fat or from the cow. Obviously, if you're eating, let's say, flank steak, different than when you're eating a ribeye. That's the only difference in nutrition facts that you can see in. But as far as the halal part, there's no evidence showing or any research showing there is any difference. If that answers your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And then there's another question, I think, to that, right? What we should look to.
Yeah, when we from a nutritionist perspective, if I'm going to shop for meat, what do you suggest we look for?
Sure. So let me talk about some nutritional facts about meat. It is rich source of high value proteins, a variety of fats, including omega-3, polysaturated fatty acids, zinc, iron, selenium, potassium, magnesium. It got sodium, vitamin A, B complex vitamins, and folic acid, which is very, very important for our blood and iron. So you can see that someone who is has low iron, especially women or folic acid, the doctor will recommend to eat some beef liver to increase the blood or to increase the iron in the blood for those women who are pregnant so they can have good deliveries and um, you know, not have any problems in the process of pregnancy. Definitely, we want to make sure we're getting enough protein. And the best source of protein is animal protein. You get, the highest is in beef, chicken, fish, but best in beef. You get a lot of protein. There is in every 100 grams of beef, I will say it has about 288 calories and it has about 26 to 30 grams of protein per 100 gram. So an average person need 1 pound, 1 grams of protein per each pound he weighs of muscle mass. So if you weigh, definitely you have to do your math, but if you do weigh 170 pound of muscle, not fat, muscle mass, which you have to have a specific scale, that means you need 170 grams of protein per day, you know.
Okay.
So, and that comes in form of the higher protein, the grams of protein are available in animal protein.
All right, thank you, Nadia. Do you want to add something before we move to the next topic?
I think I answered the questions that you were concerned about. Maybe in the second questions, we want to talk about what's the difference of the quality of the meat itself when it comes to this new culture and what's going on and the high demand of animals product because they've been raised differently than 20, 30 years ago or 50 years ago.
Right.
So
Okay.
about
We'll get
quality of
back to this subject.
sure.
Ali Rizvi, we have here a comment from Mr. Imad Dawood. It says, "Is there a clear instructions in the holy books describing the way of having halal meat?" The most of the detailed instructions actually comes from hadith
Right.
and from Quran. The Quran, like you said, Ali, that it actually tells you what not to eat.
Mhm.
What makes something not halal, but doesn't actually talk about what conditions make
Right.
something halal. I want to bring the subject of animal rights and humane. Recently halal slaughter has been banned in Greece, and before that there has been a discussion also in Britain about putting a quota on halal slaughter. And this discussion is becoming a hotter topic in Europe, and we're going to see more and more of it. Basically, it is claimed that the not stunning the animal before its slaughter is just uh, 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 exposing it to an unnecessary additional suffering.
Mhm.
And that's their basically their reasoning for trying to limit the halal slaughter. What when it comes to humanities in dealing with animals, it's disaster. This industry is a disaster in terms of animal rights. We're not even close to uh, um, uh, saving these animals from unnecessary suffering. I mean, the vegetarians who are vegetarians from an ethical perspective definitely have a point in their perspective. But we have treaded so far as a humanity in our dependency on this industry that it is very hard to back up now and fix the situation. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, like you said, when we're talking about the humane aspect, you have different positions. You have the people that that will say that we shouldn't eat animal meat at all. Like the vegetarians and vegans. And as you said, that's a very compelling argument. I mean, ethically, I haven't really found a good, robust counter argument to this, considering the way that we look at ethics today. Then there's another tier that says that animal slaughter is okay, but kill what you eat. Don't factory farming is a problem. This in sort of industrial mass slaughter and the way that animals are raised in factory farms, and that's a cruel practice. But these are people who are okay with eating meat if they're hunting it themselves and so on. And that's that's another argument that you can speak of. Then there's this idea of when we actually get to halal, like, so we're putting that aside, and right now we're talking about halal versus non-halal forms of slaughter. So as Issam mentioned as well, is that you have when you do slaughter an animal in the zabiha way, right? Again, I must reiterate that this does not have any Quranic basis whatsoever. But when you do, you cut through the arteries, you cut through basically the neck. But what do you leave intact? The one thing that you leave intact, like he said, it's a spine.
Spinal cord. Yeah.
Spinal cord. The spinal cord is the structure that transmits pain. Yeah. So everywhere in your body, the spinal cord transmits pain. When they say the beheading is humane, it's correct. Like if you just cut off somebody's head, you're severing the spinal cord, and then it is actually, even as brutal as it is a humane way to kill any living thing compared to, like, again, we're not saying beheading is humane on the Muslimish podcast. I mean, that's not what we want to get across. But if you leave the spinal cord intact, then everything that you're doing to the animal is feeling it. So stunning, this is the basis for many of these laws that are looking at the halal meat. As the world goes on, people are concerned about the ethical treatment of animals. It's a big issue. It's a justice issue that is gaining a lot of attention worldwide, and people are looking at these practices, and these practices are coming under more scrutiny. So leaving the spinal cord intact in a living animal, slaughtering them, it's unequivocally torture of the animal. Right. So that's one thing. The other thing is about, the other big sort of ethical concern is about environmental sustainability, right, of eating animals. And in that, I think as Nadia was talking about, like, there really is no difference. I mean, it's not about how the animal is slaughtered. It's about how the animal is raised. So, you're getting the animals from the same places. They're being raised on the same farms. It's just that, the halal meat is the same animals are being taken and slaughtered in the zabiha way. And for the other ones, they're just being slaughtered another way. You're still getting the animals from the same source. So that's what it really comes down to. If you're going to talk about which is more healthy, which is less healthy, it really comes down to how the animal is raised rather than slaughtered. So if you're getting, if a halal meat store or a halal butcher is getting their animals from the same source as anybody else in a sort of a Western country, a Muslim minority country, then all of the environmental implications, all the environmental sustainability implications are pretty much identical, right? There's no difference, right? Because they're being raised the same way. So that's, I think, when it comes to the humane element, there are many questions right now that are being asked. This is one reason why, as Issam also said, that even over here they say, the stunning is a bad thing. We shouldn't be stunning the animals. But now in most halal butcheries here in the West, stunning is done before halal slaughter as well, right? Making the animal unconscious before. So the stunning, there really isn't that much difference in the way that animals are slaughtered in the halal way or not. In the future, we're going to have more sort of issues around this question. We're going to have lab-grown meat, right? That's also sort of another ethics-driven sort of technological innovation that's happening. Is that it's already happening. There is already lab-grown meat. It's becoming closer and closer to the real thing. What are the implications of that? How does that fit into the whole halal haram conversation? So There is many questions to ask. It's a very dynamic place, the dynamic conversation that's happening in real time, as you know. So the fact that you're covering it is commendable. But these are some of the humane issues. And please feel free, Issam, to correct me if there's anything that I've missed.
Right. We're going to go next to Issam to comment on this. But I wanted to say that the reason I chose to do this podcast because my daughter was doing a research and there weren't any videos on YouTube that really discussed the subject in a scientific way. So I thought, why not starting to create some of this content for people who need it? I wish that I love the human, the humane aspects within the Sharia law and the kosher meat of avoiding suffering of the animal, like quenching its thirst, avoiding, preventing the slaughter in front of other animals. I wish that people who are adherent to these two religions have moved in that direction of prioritizing removing unnecessary suffering, and that would have actually created an alternative industry to what is out there. And there are people, by the way, who believe that halal should be this way. There are a very slant minority, and they have their own supply of halal meat, very expensive and very rare. But I wish that the direction has gone in the path of trying to reduce suffering. Stunning itself is a way, the animal is still alive, and the animal is not conscious when the slaughter happens, so it reduces the exposure to pain. And I think we've had a discussion with Issam. Even in the slaughterhouses here in Michigan, for example, animals are being stunned because FDA does not allow for animals not to be stunned. Is that correct, Issam?
Okay, so the animal is being stunned for a reason. It's not definitely not a humanitarian one. So they stun the animal so that they can slaughter it, even in the farms. When they stun the animal, the beef will be paralyzed. So the slaughter or the one who's going to kill the animal can come easy and just slaughter the throat. That's it. That's the idea behind stunning the animal. In Michigan, they shoot it with a gun, rifle in the head, and they give you for the halal to slaughter the throat. They're going to give you a couple of minutes so you can go and slaughter the throat before the animal dies. And I agree with Ali 90% of what he said. I disagree with some of what he said. So when it comes to, as I experienced the halal slaughtering, so what we do in the Middle East or even in our meat house, we don't kill mass. So we don't kill 5, 6, 8 beefs a day. We might kill 2, right? But not at the same time. We make sure that whenever we slaughter a beef, we make sure that it's going to take time, 15, 20 minutes to drain the blood out of it, so that when we handle the meat stays fresh. Here, if you go into a slaughterhouse, especially the non-halal one, you will see that they're going to stun, kill, and they will start the process of removing parts and moving the skin from the animal immediately. So they don't give a break 10 to 15 minutes for the animal to be drained from the blood. And that's the reason, and I believe in the Sharia law, or that's the way how we used to do it, to leave the spinal cord intact so that we can leave the brain to think that it's still alive and the heart pumps still the blood out of the body. And when we slaughter, we make sure that it's going to be one cut through the veins, left to right, so that we can leave the physics to play a part. So when the heart pumps left to right, the blood gonna go right, left to right. Then we're gonna utilize, or take advantage of the air physics to push through the veins to push the blood out. That's the mechanism of removing the blood from the animal. This is not done here. This is not done in the mass scale. It's only done in small shops where you don't have a mass production. They're gonna kill 1 animal, 2 animals at a time. That's it. You will feel the difference of the quality of the meat. And I'm not saying this is humanitarian, but what I'm saying is it's just the way it's done. But when you want to go to scale, even in our countries, if you're gonna go to a slaughterhouse, you will see things are done in a different way. Has nothing to do with what I told you about the 6 steps of the Sharia law.
Right, because like when you used to slaughter in Lebanon, you were like you had a very small supply chain to provide.
That's why I agree with
Mm.
Ali when he said that you can slaughter when you want to eat, right? So if for my use, I don't slaughter to farm and just to put free stuff and put it for 6 or 8 months for Walmart or Publix or Kroger and this and that. So when you slaughter to eat, the game is going to be a totally different game.
Mhm. Zainab is saying from farm to halal butcher shop. So there is this trend of from farm to halal butcher shop. Is it a quicker journey, less middlemen, distributors, or just as long as grocers? I don't understand the question completely, but is there butcher houses that have farm to butcher house?
They cannot,
Basically?
to answer your question, there's a lot of media and marketing saying that's from the farm to your table. They cannot do it. No farm can has or can support the expense of a health inspector. They cost a lot of money and they have to go by regulations. They cannot sell. Name me one person who tells you that it's from the farm to my store and his store gonna be closed today or tomorrow morning. They're gonna be closed. They cannot serve. They cannot sell. They will have a fine, and it's very severe fine. So it's just a marketing tool, especially in Dearborn. And I know who she's talking about.
So they have to have a health inspector, and they cannot afford him by themselves. That's what you're saying?
They cannot. It has to go through the government, through the local government.
Uh-huh. And those who slaughter a custom and then they sell, that's illegal.
That's illegal. That's illegal because you don't know what you're eating. You cannot tell if the beef is healthy or no. You can They did
Right.
not test the meat.
Yeah.
How should you I don't know consume the meat.
Mu'mina Isam mentioned that the spinal cord has to stay intact, and that definitely prolonged the suffering. Isam is saying this is the halal way. He's not talking about suffering. So yeah, it does prolong suffering. Why do we use halal and zabiha in synonymous manner? Correct. They are two different things due to the difference in fatwas that Ali spoke about in the beginning of the episode. So some say that what is not zabiha, but it is, it's still halal because it is done by Christians or Jews, what Muslims call the people of the book. And some say no, it has to, in addition to that, it has to be also in a it has to meet certain conditions that makes it a zabiha, and it's an internal Muslim debate. In this episode, we're saying that this subject is beyond really that ritualistic religious discussion. If we're going to look at the purposes of Sharia, of the purposes of religion, if the purpose was reducing pain, if the purpose was ensuring health, all that, we have gone beyond it. I want to just relate a little experience I had myself, like a direct experience I had before we go to Nadia for nutrition, is I visited a slaughterhouse. So, a chicken is even slaughtered at a more mass scale. The only time a human is involved in that factory is when they hang the chicken in the beginning of the process, and then you don't see the chicken until it comes from the other end packaged already. There is no way that this can be done by hand. The machine, there is thousands of chicken that's being processed every minute, and you have a long line of people whose job is to hang the chicken from its leg on the machine, and then the line starts, and then the chicken passes through some electrocuted water where it stuns it so it goes unconscious, and then it passes through a slitting machine where it slits all the throats of the chicken, and then after that it gets processed step by step, and it comes out packaged from the other end. Now the this factory produced halal chicken. When they produced the halal chicken, there was only one difference. They had a little tape recorder saying Bismillah, Bismillah at the place where the head was cut. And it says it very fast because the chicken passes at a very fast speed, and it gets hung in a little yeah, I mean, there are videos, but I don't want to play videos here that have these graphic images. So that's my personal experience. I felt it is almost silly that it has reduced that يعني ritualistic procedure. It has been reduced to that tape recorder saying Bismillah, Bismillah at a very fast pace. So we really have to grow up or grow out from this and think about a larger scale. I am with thinking of how and the sources that we're getting our meat, but we think from a humanitarian perspective. We think from quality, from sustenance, like sustainability, like Ali has mentioned, the effect on that one of the biggest greenhouse effects are cows, because of the methane gas that they produce. It is actually one of the largest contributors to global warming, and other factors. It's not sustainable unless technology now has trying to manufacture meats that might change the route of humanity. Otherwise, it's not sustainable the way it is being done, and definitely not the amount of unnecessary suffering that animals face. We have to question the process. Definitely, we cannot claim to be humanitarians and humanists also without questioning that process. Nadia, in terms of nutrition, um,
Yes.
we are one of the one of the highest consuming countries of meat in the world, and we have one of the best meats also in the world, luckily. What are your thoughts on that?
So I want to add on top of this topic, according to the Muslims in dietetics and nutrition, a member group of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, halal food can never contain pork or pork product. That includes gelatin and shortenings or any alcohol. So Rashid Ahmed, he's the founder and president of the Muslim Consumer Group, and which both certifies halal food and educates Muslim about different foods. Halal status says that to be truly halal, how the animal are raised is taken into account. So very, very importantly, the animal must be fed vegetarian diet, which means that many chicken and cows raised on the US farm don't qualify because some of them are fed contain animal byproducts. So halal animals can also can't be treated with antibiotics or growth hormones, since the hormones may contain pork-based ingredients. So those are some research that I've made, and truly what we really want to focus on from a nutritional standpoint is how the animals has been raised and what they're been fed. And that's the biggest concern when it comes to nutrition and when it comes to our health. um, so that's from a nutritional standpoint. I feel like there's 5 rules if you want to eat meat. I'll go by, which is very hard in the U.S. because of the halal culture. We have to choose grass-fed, pasture-raised, and organic meats, which is very hard to find halal, and they're very more expensive. But ideally, you will eat less of the meat and more plant-based. So technically, what I tell my clients all the time, that 75% of your plate should be vegetables, and then maybe 1/4 of your plate should have some proteins. And then avoid all processed meat. So stay away from processed meats, such as like the deli meats. These are the meats that technically are the most unhealthy processed for your body and your health, and they can cause disease, illnesses, and cancer. And these are information and research that I've obtained from Dr. Hyman. He's very known in the health and community. Also, like how you prepare the meats is very, very important, because the way we prepare meats is the key. Because high temperature cooking, the grilling, the frying, smoking of charring causes toxic byproduct, and that can come in the food, or the meat can absorb those byproduct. This also happens when we cook fish or chicken at high temperature. And then this leads to the production of compounds called polycyclic, and then carbons, and also a lot of like other byproducts, which studies have shown that those can cause cancer, and also change. So changing the way that we cook and how we cook food is very, very essential. So not only thinking of where and how the meat has been raised and what has been fed, we also know how to, how to cook our food and our meat, and then pile on the vegetables, filling out 75% of the plate with vegetables. That's very, very important. And I also want to really tap in, very importantly, on the subject that when we are eating meat, or we have meat in our diet, what is causing cholesterol, diabetes, and all these autoimmune disease, and all these health issues that a lot of people are diagnosed with recently, and it's just rising and going higher and higher, is because of the excess sugar and the high processed food diet that we are combining with eating meat and vegetables. So the latest research has found that meat by itself should not raise your cholesterol or cause you any diseases, rather than watching out for what other ingredients in food you're including in your diet, that the combination together is causing us to be unhealthy and having all these disease. So like sugar, processed, package, container. And I have a philosophy: the quality and the quantity of food is the big, is what really, like, if you really want to, I have a quote, I say, if you losing weight or being healthy is a matter of the quantity and quality. So the quality of food that you're eating and the quantity of food that you're eating, those are very, very important, because how much you're eating and what are you eating is the big, two important factors that you want to consider when it comes to your health. The second thing is, I'll say, if God created food for us on earth, let's focus on that. 90% of our food should be consumed from food that God created for us on earth. We're talking about whole food, fruits, vegetables, protein, beef, meat, chicken. We're talking about grains, nuts, seeds. These are the food that we should have on our plate. Rather, right now, you see the cornflakes, the cereals, a lot of like processed cheese, a lot of rice, and, bread. And there's a lot of product. 80% of what you see in the market right now didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago. 80% of what you see in the market, like when you go to those aisles in the supermarket to shop for your house, 80% of the product that you see now on the shelf didn't exist 30 years ago. And if we go back in time, I remember I used to go with my grandma to the butcher, and he will slaughter the cow in front of me, and I was 5 years old. And I will get the meat, then we'll go to the chicken, store, and then there's like literally, and then we'll pick one, and they will slaughter it right in front of us, and then we'll take our meat, get our vegetables. And if I'm gonna have a snack or something, it would be like the market will be very minimum, like just one or two options that I have to choose from. Now we take our kids to the market, and there's million aisles. There's from every kind or every product, there's many different brands, and it's really hard to choose from. And we want to try them all, and that's causing us to have those diseases. And so before we really care too much, I mean, we should care about everything, but really, like, the nutrition facts in meat will not impact our health. There's no any difference or any science evidence showing that if you slaughter it halal way or non-halal way, but really how it's raised and what other ingredients are we putting on our plate? What are we
Right.
eating?
So if our community has cared about nutrition as much as it cares about halal, we would have a much healthier
Yes,
community
obviously.
in this subject. Ali, the one topic I think is very, because it's on the theme of the your book, the Atheist Muslim, which is sometimes regardless of the conviction of a person, um, or even questioning the subject, they just feel inclined to stick to halal food. And you'll see it in the most ironic places. For example, there was a bar that's next to my house here in Dearborn, and they had a sign one time. They said the sign said beer pong and halal wings. So they have clients who go there to drink alcohol, which is prohibited in Islam, but they insist on having the wings to be halal. So it is beyond religiosity. It is something else. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I'll say it. And this is actually, thank you for bringing this up. This is something that is sort of a central premise in my book, is that people are driven by ideology and they're driven by identity. So their identity is that they're Muslim. The ideology that they believe in is Islam. And Islam and Muslim are two different things. So when you incorporate, if the ideology becomes a part of your identity, and this happens with indoctrination, when you're younger and they kind of drum it into you, and you grow up thinking I'm a Muslim, you may not have read the Quran, you may not know anything that's in it. You may be completely ignorant of the actual tenets of the religion. But then when someone criticizes anything about the religion, you're going to take it as a personal attack. People can come to you and say that, oh, I don't believe in quantum physics. I don't think that's real. And you'd be like, oh, okay, fine. You don't believe in it. Doesn't matter. Or if someone comes to you and says, I think evolution is real, then you might take it much more personally, because you don't see it just as an attack on a concept, an ideological concept. You see it as an attack on your person, on your identity. So that is something that drives people. So not many people know that the Quran, the halal concept in the Quran, it doesn't say anything about slaughtering. It doesn't say anything about sacrificing in the name of Allah. There's nothing about any of those things. So all the meat is halal, but that doesn't matter. That comes secondary to the fact that we are Muslims. This is what we do. This is how we have to present ourselves to the world. It's not just an Islam and Muslim thing. This is a pretty common thing in any kind of sort of tribalistic, any kind of tribalistic dynamic, whether it's political, whether it's anything else. People identify with a certain tribe. And they want belonging to a certain group, and they adhere to those tenets, whether they actually have any kind of ideological basis or not.
Thank you. Final words. We have come to an end of our presentation, and thank you all for your very valuable input. So where do you think we're heading with all this information that you provided, that halal versus non-halal does not have nutritional value, does not have quality influence, and is even Islamically is not very solid. The concept of halal, it has developed more recently in the way it has developed as a trend rather than as something that's essential. And as you know, these verses that came, Ali, about this subject are in a totally different context than today. And we cannot go backwards anymore. We cannot have, like you said, Nadia, having that little village supplier who will, because me too, I went and I remember in Bin Jbel going to buy the chicken, and then they pardon the graphic violence, but they slit the chicken and they let it run, and they let it run, and then they grab it after it, which is it was a shocking scene for me when I was a kid, because sometimes they don't have enough containers for the chicken that's being slaughtered. But at any case, he's only supplying a little village. This is no longer sustainable, and the government and governments across especially the developed the Western countries, they have tried to develop the best ways in terms of health and humanitarian value in dealing with this subject. If there's something to contribute to this, is going further in humanitarian ways, going further in nutritional awareness in that subject. But to stick to something just because of that doesn't, it's not making sense anymore, and the way people are doing it is really something that we love to tackle this subject here on Muslimish, to shed light on it when things become bordering irrationality. I want to leave you with final words, and we'll end this episode. We'll go with Issam.
So, on the personal level, for me, I agree with Ms. Nadia when she mentioned about meat doesn't cause cholesterol, and we talked about this multiple times, me and you, Wissam. So, I'm a meat graver. I eat meat daily. If I don't do it daily, I think I'm gonna faint. On the personal level, even I eat raw meat a lot and raw liver. So, this is on the personal level. I was raised like that, but when it comes to halal and halal meat, I believe we only see this in the mid societies, just in these societies, United States or in Europe, because in a way or another way, this gonna coincide with what Ali said. It has to do with the ID. So we think that this is our ID. That, yeah, this is the Sharia law. We should kill the animal in this way, but you don't know what is the Sharia law. For me, on the personal level, again, it's my own way of thinking. If you kill an animal, because I killed many animals and I know what's the process. If you kill an animal and let it drain out of blood and you handle the meat in a proper way, it doesn't matter if it's halal or not halal. You don't have to say Allahu Akbar and kill it. If you said Allahu Akbar and you kill it, and just after you did that, you process the meat in the wrong way, it's going to be poisonous. So it's about how you handle the meat, how you process the meat. And this is actually concerned with what Ms. Nadia said. It's about how you can offer value. If you want to follow halal, okay, follow it as a 6 steps, as I said, which is non-scalable and you cannot follow it. So it's about the value that you provide with the meat, not the way you kill the meat. How the meat is raised, how it's killed, and how it's handled. That should be our worry. Not if he says Allahu Akbar before he kills it or no. No, this doesn't add any value.
Right, and even restricting slaughter to Muslims, it seems also not fitting our pluralistic societies today, where religion is supposed
Um,
to
I,
be a
I
private
don't wanna,
thing. You
I
should not
don't
even
wanna,
ask the person
I,
what
I,
religion
I
is.
don't want to say hypocrites, but there's a lot of hypocrites in our societies, especially who deal with this. Lots of those.
Thank you, Isam. Nadia, final word.
I think all what I say is just to add on to Dr. Ali and also, you know, our guest Issam as well. It's just, I think I pray for this upcoming generation to come because it's getting harder and harder, especially in the health and the nutrition industry. Um, I think that we need to teach our kids and our new generation how to eat whole food and stay away from processed and eat the chicken, eat the meat, and just try to be balanced. Think about what God created on earth, and if we can, hopefully, get focus more on finding farm raised, just more natural way of how to raise our, the meat and the cows. I think this would be amazing for our community. And to make it halal, although it doesn't seem like there's any difference after I listened to to Dr. Ali and Wissam, but definitely, because it's the identity, as Dr. Ali said, that it's just, this is how we've been raised. We have to ask the question, is it halal? But it doesn't seem there's any difference. But definitely just focus on the nutritional values and how our food has been processed and what our animals has been fed is
Thank you.
more important.
Thank you, Nadia. Ali, final word.
Yeah, I'm just going to say something sort of broader, related to what I said before, is that, yeah, when we talk about things, you were talking about like all the evidence and, even it's not Quranically solid, the science doesn't back it up. That's not what actually moves people. That's not the kind of thing that causes people to change their behavior. There's a tribalistic element. All of this is, people respond to stories. They respond emotionally. When they emotionally respond to something, that's when they actually change their behavior. If you look at religion itself, it's based on lots of storytelling, lots of art, lots of, you've got the beautiful adhan and the musicality of it. You've got the art in the Vatican. You've got the architecture and the calligraphy. And those are the things that make people feel things. And that's when you package a message in that vehicle, and that is what actually hits people. So I think the way that if we do want to make changes, whether it's on this topic or whether it's in any other topic, where we want to influence people, we need to borrow a page from that playbook and really try to talk about, create, like, the anecdote you told about going to the chicken farm. I mean, I hear about that, and I think, that actually affects me. It makes me wonder if I really want to eat chicken for the next. Unfortunately, I probably will still, as does too personally. But there's that's something that actually affects us when we hear stories and real experiences of people, and that's really that's more compelling than sort of facts and data, and all of that stuff is important too. But I think in terms of messaging and how we try to change behaviors and educate people, there has to be that storytelling and emotionally resonant element as well. Right. And that goes for everything in general.
Yeah, this is an excellent point, a very important point. And I feel it's more about belonging than it's about, the facts. And that's why, you'll find even young children, without even understanding the subject, they just feel belonging to this community. We eat halal, it's a thing that we do, and it becomes a way of belonging to the community. Just want to give also a disclaimer on the story I gave about my eyewitness on the chicken slaughter, is that not all chicken is done this way, but this is the factory that I've visited. What attracts me now when I shop for meat is, for example, Amish raised, grass-fed, organic. These are the terms that indicate quality for me, rather than halal or not halal. I want to end with an invocation. Let us find ourselves inspired to stretch our minds with questions that test our limits. Let us champion the values of intellectual bravery, perpetual curiosity, and hunger for truth. Let us honor scientific thinkers, not just in our laboratories, but in the practice of nurturing compassionate, egalitarian communities that value free inquiry. Let us work to grow our understanding of the interconnectedness of all life and expand our empathy and the reach of our compassion. And let us take daring risks for a freer, fairer, and more joyful world. With that, I would like to thank my guests and everyone who watched us today. And we hope to see you in upcoming Muslimish broadcasts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wissam.
Thank you for listening to Muslimish Free Thinkers. Do let us know what you think of this episode at facebook.com/Muslimish. Don't forget to visit us at muslimish.org.